one thing that should be noted is that it is not super easy to enter ketosis while fasting. For example, if you were to start fasting today, it probably would take you at least 16 hours to see even the beginning of a ketosis. So people ask me, what does it take? It usually takes a combination of the three things to really get into ketosis are carbohydrate restriction, exercise, and fasting. And so the more you are able to combine these three, the faster you will enter into ketosis. If you just stopped eating, I would say probably 20 hours is the minimum fasting period to really start ketosis. So if you do a 24-hour fast, you're likely to have some moderate level of ketosis, and the minute you start eating, it will go away. And so we think that if you want to maintain prolonged ketosis, and fasting is great as an induction mechanism, but you have to continue with the carbohydrate restriction. And the carbohydrate restriction is pretty strict, which is, one of the downsides and benefits at the same time of these types of diets. It's restricted for a normal adult to 25 grams per day, which is the equivalent of 1 to 2 apples. So it is not very much. No pasta, no pizza, no rice, no potato, none of the things that are rich in carbohydrates. And personally, from a personal standpoint, one of the things that I find the hardest on a prolonged ketogenic diet is the idea that you cannot eat fruits because most fruits actually are rich in carbohydrates.
So intermittent fat, time restricted eating, for example. So if it's only 16 hours, this is more just about restricting our caloric intake to an 8-hour window than it is about ketosis at all.
I agree. Unless you are doing some form of carbohydrate restriction.
Right.
Or exercising. For example, many of us who are doing time-restricted feeding actually will exercise in the morning in the absence of eating. And I think from personal experience, I can tell you this is enough to send me into ketosis, for example. Even though I'm within a 16-hour window, if you have vigorous exercise at the end of your fasting, you will see ketosis as well.
Yeah, and I've always wondered about that, if there's like a temporal component to it, like the amount of time you expose yourself to ketosis, because I think for me, I do eat a very low carb diet, but sometimes it's not always ketogenic, but I do exercise fasted. And then I think, okay, I'm in ketosis, but I'm only in ketosis for like a couple hours until I eat again. And I wonder if those like 2 hours that I'm exposing myself to ketones is enough for any benefits, because I think I'm cycling on a daily going in and out of ketosis. But I was wondering if there's any benefit to just a short-term burst of ketones, and maybe that's just improving my metabolic flexibility because I'm liberating fatty acids from my adipose, and I'm getting that metabolic benefit of burning all different types of fuels in a day. But what are your thoughts on just a very short-term ketosis on the daily?
That's a very good question. And I can give you two answers. One is, when we conducted the experiment in mice where we alternated them on a ketogenic diet, 1 week on, 1 week off, we only measured changes in physiology when the mice were off of the ketogenic diet, because we actually were looking exactly for what you're describing, a memory of what had happened, so an epigenetic memory. And I can tell you, we saw differences. So we know even when the mice were stopped from the ketogenic diet, they kept a memory of what had happened before. We know that fasting mimicking diet that Walter Longo has developed has the same effect. You can go on this diet for a week of low-calorie type of pseudo-fasting, and you eventually will induce physiological changes which persist for a period of time. What we haven't done, and that we actually are planning to do, is to really look at the persistence. If you were to go on a ketogenic diet for a week now in humans, how long would this last? What is the permanence of the signature? That's one question. The second question is, how long do you have to be on it to actually induce a response that we can measure? And so all of these studies are actually currently underway, and I'm quite excited by what they might mean in the future, because I think we really need to better understand, really from a practical point of view, how long do you have to be on ketosis to reap its benefits, and how long will that response last for you?
Yeah, and what millimolar concentration do we have to
Yes.
reach for these
Very
effects to
key
actually be
question
there?
as well. Key question as well.